You swore you would not kill me until you had learned all my secrets. That day is here, Zanna informed him, igniting the twin blades of her lightsaber. Bane drew out his own weapon in response, the shimmering blade rising up from the curved hilt with a low hum. The two combatants dropped into fighting stances and began to circle slowly. I have surpassed you, Bane, Zanna warned him. Now I am the master. Then prove it. He lunged toward her, and the battle began. Zanna expected Bane to come at her aggressively, but even so, she was caught off guard by the ferociousness of his attack. He opened with a series of two-handed overhead chops, using his great height to bring his blade hacking down at her from above. She easily blocked each blow, but the momentum of the crushing impact caused her to stagger back, throwing her off balance. She recovered quickly, however, spinning out of the way when he followed up with a low, looping swipe meant to hew her off at the knees. She retaliated with a quick jab with the tip of one of her blades toward Bane's face, but he ducked his head to the side and came back with a wide-arcing single-handed slash at chest level. Zanna intercepted his blade with one of her own, angling her weapon so that the momentum of Bane's attack was redirected downward, sending the tip of his lightsaber into the dirt. This should have exposed him to a counter-thrust, but he was already reacting to her move, driving his entire body forward into Zanna's before she could bring her weapon up. His weight slammed into her, knocking her back as Bane snapped his neck forward. Zanna threw her head back just in time, and the headbutt that would have smashed her face glanced off her chin instead. Scrambling to stay on her feet, Zanna raised her weapon back up, spinning the handle so that the twirling blades formed a defensive wall that repelled Bane's next half a dozen blows. During her years under Bane, they had sparred hundreds of times. During these sessions, she had always known he was keeping something in reserve for the day they would inevitably fight for real. Only now did she realize just how much he had been holding back. He was faster than she could ever have imagined, and he was using new sequences and unfamiliar moves he had never revealed during their practice sessions. But somehow, she had survived the initial flurry, and now she knew what to expect. The next exchange had a more familiar feel. Bane pressed the action with a devastating complex combination of attacks, but Zanna was able to intercept, parry, or deflect each one. Her defensive style was simple, but performed correctly, it was nearly impenetrable. Recognizing this, Bane backed off and changed tactics. Instead of a savage, relentless pressure meant to overwhelm her, he settled into a pattern of feints and quick thrusts, probing and prodding her defenses in search of a weakness as the two of them settled in for a long battle of attrition. Zanna had fought him once before, back when he was still encased in his Orvalisk armor. She remembered it had been like battling a force of nature. The chitinous parasites covering his entire body had been impervious to lightsaber attacks, allowing him to attack with pure animal rage. She had survived that encounter only by convincing Bane she hadn't betrayed him, and in the end, he had let her live. His style back then had been brutish and simple, though undeniably effective. Now, however, his technique was more advanced. Unable to simply bully his way heedlessly forward, he had developed an unpredictable, seemingly random style. Each time she thought she could anticipate where the next attack was coming from, he changed tactics, disrupting the rhythm of the battle and causing her to give ground. She was being driven back in a slow retreat, and she realized he was herding her toward the shuttles, hoping to pin her against the metal hull with no place to go. Zanna was content to play along, taking quick, careful steps backward over the soft, sandy terrain as she began to gather her power. The key was subtlety. She couldn't let Bane sense what she was doing, or he would launch into another wild flurry of attacks, forcing her to focus all her energy on keeping him at bay. She had to give him the illusion he was controlling the action, when in fact, she was only a few seconds away from unleashing a burst of dark side sorcery that would rip his mind apart. Bane circled wide, trying to come in on her left flank. Zanna simply altered the angle of her retreat, taking several more steps backward to keep him at a safe distance, as she swatted away a few token slashes and strikes. With her attention split between the enemy in front of her and the Sith spell she was preparing to cast, Zanna didn't notice how close she was to the freshly dug graves. Her heel caught on the uneven ground as she backed up, throwing her off balance as she fell awkwardly to the ground and landed on her back. Bane was on her in an instant, his lightsaber slashing viciously, his heavy boots kicking and stomping at her prone body. Zanna thrashed and twisted on the ground, her lightsaber flailing desperately to parry Bane's blade. She felt a sharp crack as the toe of his boot caught her in the ribs, but she rolled with the impact and managed to end up back on her feet. Her vision was blurred with stars, pain shooting through her left side with each gasp as she tried to catch her breath. Bane didn't let up, coming at her with a frenetic assault. The next few seconds were a blur as Zanna relied purely on instincts honed over 20 years to parry the wave of blows, miraculously keeping him from landing a lethal strike. Zanna threw herself into a back handspring, flipping head over heels 3 times in quick succession just to put some space between her and Bane. Before the 4th one, she suddenly stopped and went into a crouch, thrusting forward with her lightsaber like a spear to impale her opponent as he charged after her in pursuit. Only Bane wasn't there. Anticipating her move, he had stopped, several meters away. Gritting her teeth against the pain from her broken rib, Zanna rose to her feet. Bane hadn't killed her, but her survival had come with significant cost. She was tired now. The desperate scramble to escape after tripping on the grave had pushed her one step closer to physical exhaustion. She felt the broken rib with each ragged breath, and she sensed that the injury would make it harder for her to pivot and turn, limiting the effectiveness of her defensive maneuvers. She couldn't wait any longer. She'd wanted to surprise Bane, slowly gather her strength before unleashing it so he wouldn't be able to properly defend against it. But she knew she wouldn't survive another clash of lightsabers. Opening herself up to the power of the dark side, Zanna reached out and touched the mind of her master. Bane sensed the attack, bracing himself. He had encouraged Zanna's training in Sith sorcery, knowing she might very well use it against him one day. If it turned out he wasn't strong enough to survive, then he wasn't worthy of being the Dark Lord of the Sith. That didn't mean he was unprepared, however. Dark side sorcery was complex. It attacked the psyche in ways that were difficult to explain, and even more difficult to defend against. Bane had no talent for it, yet he had done his best to study the techniques. What he learned was that the only real counter was the victim's strength of will. Zanna's assault began as a sharp pain in his skull, like a hot knife stabbing directly into his brain before carving down to slice the 2 hemispheres in half. Then the knife exploded, sending a million burning shards in every direction. Each one burrowed into his subconscious, seeking out buried fears and nightmares, only to rip them free and haul them to the surface.